Hello, family. Enjoy this relaxing moment with Surly Tales. Remember to hit the like button, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments. It means the world to us. Also, share this video with your friends and loved ones, and turn on post notifications so you don't miss future videos from us. Thank you as you do so. Sit back and relax as we dive into the story. Malik stood outside the chic boutique, gripping a neatly wrapped box as if it were priceless treasure. The sign above the glass doors read, Aldo, and while it wasn't the legendary Chanel brand his fiancée adored, he felt proud of the bag he had chosen. He had sacrificed overtime pay, skipped lunch breaks, and even pawned a wristwatch that had sentimental value, all to buy this gift. It wasn't so much about the label but rather the thought. He wanted Tasha to know that she mattered enough for him to push beyond his limits. He rehearsed a short speech under his breath as he approached the bus stop. Bright city lights glittered in the distance, contrasting sharply with the dim flicker of the street lamp overhead. There, he waited, inhaling the crisp evening air. A sense of nervous excitement rushed through him. Despite the brand not being the luxury Tasha dreamed of, he believed his gesture would show his dedication and love. As the bus rumbled closer, he whispered, "I just want her to feel special. She deserves it." He clutched the box tighter. 30 minutes later, he stepped into the small apartment he shared with Tasha. She was on the couch, her eyelashes long and perfectly curled, her hair styled with bright highlights, scrolling through social media. The glow from her phone illuminated her face, and when Malik quietly closed the door behind him, she barely looked up. "Hey babe," he said softly, removing his coat. "I have a surprise." Her eyes flickered to the neatly wrapped box in his hands. She set her phone aside, raised an eyebrow, and asked, "What's that?" Her tone was casual, but there was a noticeable lack of warmth. His heart pounded. "I've been saving up for a while." "Well, open it," Malik managed with a hopeful smile, extending the box to her. Tasha tore off the wrapping paper. Her eyes landed on the Aldo label, and she let out a short, dismissive laugh. "Aldo? Seriously?" She turned the handbag over in her hands, unimpressed by its moderate price tag. "You know I've been talking about wanting a Chanel bag for months. This isn't something I can show off on Instagram." Malik's hopeful expression faltered. He tried to stand tall, but her words were like daggers. I know, but I couldn't afford Chanel just yet. I thought this was still beautiful." She shrugged, plopping the bag on the coffee table as if it were an old magazine. "Beautiful or not, it's not the brand I want. You keep telling me you'll make it someday, but I need something real right now." Her criticisms weighed heavily in the stale air. Malik stared at the handbag, recalling every sacrifice he'd made to buy it. The heartbreak he felt wasn't solely about the bag, it was the realization that Tasha's love might be tied more to labels and social status than to genuine affection. "I'm sorry," he whispered, though he wasn't entirely sure why he felt compelled to apologize. He had done his best. She tapped her phone screen. "I posted about wanting Chanel for weeks. Everyone knows I've been eyeing that new limited edition. Now I have to explain why I ended up with this mall bag." She let out a scoff, more disappointed than grateful. Malik swallowed the lump forming in his throat. "I just wanted you to feel special, even if I'm not rich yet." Tasha's rolling eyes spoke volumes. She snatched her phone back up and returned to scrolling, effectively dismissing him. "Well, I'm not impressed," she said flatly. "Try harder next time, Malik." With those words, the conversation ended. The bright overhead light did nothing to soften the chill of her indifference. Malik sat down on the edge of their worn-out couch, quietly absorbing the tension in the room. He wondered how their relationship had deteriorated to this point. They used to talk about dreams and building a future together. Now it felt like every conversation revolved around money, designer labels, or social media status. After a few moments of thick silence, Tasha rose to her feet and walked to the bedroom, phone in hand. "I'm going to bed," she muttered. "Make sure to lock the door." He nodded, staring down at the unopened letter in his pocket. It was a letter of rejection from a major investor for the startup he was trying to launch. The dream he once thought would impress her had taken another blow, and so had his spirit. Later that night, Malik found himself sitting alone on the tiny balcony outside their apartment. The moonlight cast shadows across the concrete, and the hum of distant cars filled the night air. He looked out at the sprawling city skyline, so full of opportunity, yet seemingly out of reach. The lights in high-rise buildings twinkled, as if mocking his current struggles. He clutched the railing and closed his eyes, replaying Tasha's reaction. He thought of the times he had worked double shifts, the moments he passed on coffee runs with colleagues, all to save a few extra bills. Tears threatened to spill, but he held them back. Instead, he promised himself he would use this pain as motivation. Inside, Tasha was in bed, texting someone. He could hear the faint buzz of notifications. He suspected it wasn't just her girlfriends. He had seen glimpses of messages from a man named Ricardo, but he never dared to confront her directly. Instead, he swallowed his suspicions, convinced that if he became successful enough, Tasha would be fully satisfied. Maybe then she'd see the lengths he would go just to provide for her. Yet, deep down, a tiny voice whispered that real love shouldn't require proving yourself through extravagant gifts. The doubt festered, but he silenced it. For now, it was easier to cling to the hope that things would get better soon. That he would rise above his financial constraints and give Tasha everything she wanted. Because, in his heart, he still loved her and believed in the woman he once fell for. A woman who, long ago, said she loved him for who he was, not what he owned. He gazed at the distant city lights and made a quiet vow. One day, I'll have more than enough. And maybe then, everything will change. 2 weeks crawled by like a slow, painful march, punctuated by Tasha's critical comments and Malik's silent determination. The tension in their apartment had grown so thick that it felt suffocating. Where once Tasha would greet him with a playful kiss at the door, she now barely looked up from her phone. Conversations that should have been intimate and comforting turned into terse, one-sided monologues about her desires, her frustrations, and her comparisons with other couples on social media. One afternoon, Malik mustered the courage to ask, "Tasha, do you think we're okay? I mean, as a couple?" She pursed her lips, glancing at him over the rim of her tall lot. They were in a crowded cafe, her chosen spot for brunch. She scrolled through her Instagram feed, uninterested in engaging. "I don't know, Malik. Everything just feels stuck," she finally said, snapping a quick selfie. "You keep saying you'll make it, but I'm tired of waiting." He wanted to defend himself, to remind her that building a startup from scratch was no easy feat, yet he held back. He feared pushing too hard, worried she'd just walk away. Later that week, she initiated the dreaded conversation. "I need some space," she announced one evening, arms folded across her chest as she leaned against the kitchen counter. Malik's heart thundered in his ears. "Space? Are you breaking up with me?" She shrugged. "Not exactly. But we should probably take a break. You know, give each other room to think." She grabbed her coat, pausing briefly to glance at him. "I'm staying at my friend's place for a while." There was a finality in her tone that left him stunned. He tried to form words, but all that came out was a hushed, "Okay." The following day, Tasha disappeared with her suitcase. Malik stood in the now emptier apartment, feeling hollow. He noticed the Aldo bag he had bought her, tossed aside in a corner, collecting dust. He sighed and gently moved it to a safer spot, a symbolic gesture of cherishing something she rejected. 48 hours later, while scrolling through social media, Malik froze at a post on Tasha's feed. She was at a champagne brunch, dressed in a designer dress he didn't recognize, arm in arm with a smooth-talking nightclub owner named Ricardo. A table laden with oysters, strawberries, and multiple champagne flutes filled the photo's backdrop. Tasha glowed with a bright smile he hadn't seen in months. No caption, just a subtle tag of Ricardo's name and a flurry of flattering comments from her friends. Malik felt the familiar sting of disappointment, followed by a wave of resolve. Instead of letting heartbreak consume him, he took a screenshot and silently saved it to a folder on his phone labeled Fuel. It was a small act of defiance, a reminder to himself that this moment would become part of his motivation to move forward. If anything, Tasha's abandonment fanned the embers of his ambition into a roaring fire. Meanwhile, Tasha was living her best life, or so it seemed on the surface. Ricardo was everything Malik was not: overtly flashy, rolling around in a sleek Maserati, boasting a mansion with a rooftop pool, and dripping in designer accessories. He lavished Tasha with gifts, Chanel purses, lavish spa treatments, and high-end wigs. Her social media was awash in extravagant displays of wealth that made her appear like she had stumbled into a fairy tale romance. "When a man can provide," she declared in an Instagram live session with her closest followers, "you don't have to constantly worry about tomorrow. It's about time I upgraded my life." Her girlfriends cheered her on, telling her she had leveled up. They seemed to ignore the fact that Tasha had left Malik with little warning. Or perhaps they didn't care. They were enamored with the glitz and glam that Ricardo offered. And Tasha, enjoying the admiration and envy, didn't bother reminding them of how Malik had once been her rock. In her new narrative, Malik was the broke ex who couldn't cut it, and Ricardo was the knight in shining armor, better dressed, better connected, and definitely better funded. In private, Tasha would sometimes feel a pang of guilt. She remembered Malik's earnest eyes, his unwavering support when her own mother fell ill for a brief time. But she quickly shoved those memories aside. Each time doubt crept in, she glanced at a brand new pair of red-bottomed heels or admired the reflection of a designer handbag in the mirror. Those reminders of Ricardo's apparent generosity helped her stay committed to this new path. For his part, Malik refused to publicly comment on Tasha's new relationship. When acquaintances sent him DMs with screenshots of Tasha's lavish posts, his standard reply was a polite, "I wish her well." He never once engaged in gossip. Instead, he poured his heart and soul into the fintech startup he had co-founded with his college friend, Andre, affectionately called Dre. Their idea was revolutionary, at least on paper, a micro-investing platform that aimed to bring financial tools to underserved communities in Africa. "It's about empowering the everyday person," Malik often said during their late-night brainstorming sessions, fueled by cheap takeout and determination. The nights were long, the rejections from potential investors frequent. But neither Malik nor Dre allowed failure to paralyze them. For every no, they refined their pitch. For every lost opportunity, they found another potential lead. At times, Dre tried to bring up Tasha, hoping to offer emotional support. "Hey man, you sure you're okay? I know you two were together for a while." Malik would just nod, eyes focused on his laptop screen, lines of code reflecting in his glasses. "I'm good, bro. This is all the therapy I need," he'd say, tapping the keyboard. And in a sense, it was true. The relentless pursuit of success became the balm for his wounded pride. As the startup progressed, so did Tasha's relationship with Ricardo. She believed she had found a man who could offer the lifestyle she craved: champagne brunches, private parties, and VIP sections at the hottest clubs. When she posted pictures of her new life, the likes poured in by the hundreds, and her friends left fire emojis in the comments. The adrenaline rush of online attention was intoxicating. Each new snapshot felt like a step further away from her old life with Malik. Yet, Tasha had no idea how drastically her world would eventually collide with Malik's again. She couldn't fathom that the man she had dismissed as a project would transform himself into a powerful force in the tech world, someone whose newfound success would eventually leave her standing on the outside, looking in. At that moment, she was too busy sipping champagne to notice the quiet, steady rise of the man she had cast aside. Late nights, cold pizza, stacks of energy drink cans. These were the markers of Malik and Dre's world as they toiled away in the cramped loft they called an office. It was far from glamorous. The paint on the walls was peeling, the desk chairs squeaked whenever someone shifted, and the overhead fluorescent lighting cast unflattering shadows. But in this small space, they were shaping the future of fintech, one line of code, one pitch deck, and one bold idea at a time. "Hey, can you pass me that folder?" Malik asked, eyes still locked on his computer screen. He was finalizing the algorithm that would allow users to invest micro amounts seamlessly into diversified portfolios. Dre slid the folder over without looking up from his own screen. "Got another pitch on Thursday. The investor wants to see a demo that's bulletproof," he said, fatigue evident in his voice. Despite the exhaustion, they were fueled by an unshakable belief in their mission. They truly wanted to create a platform that would revolutionize micro-investing in Africa, offering financial empowerment to people who had historically been overlooked by traditional banks. The drive to make a social impact mingled with their personal dreams of success and stability. Malik's mind occasionally wandered to Tasha. She had been gone for months now, parading her newfound luxury lifestyle with Ricardo for all to see. And though it stung, the heartbreak slowly transformed into laser-focused determination. Malik promised himself that one day he would stand on his own stage, not to spite Tasha, but to prove to himself that he could achieve greatness without compromising his values. In the quiet moments, he sometimes found himself scrolling through her profile, just a quick glance at the life she was living. But as time went on, he did it less and less. The more traction the startup gained, the more he realized that his true worth wasn't tied to Tasha's approval. It was measured in the success he built and the people he helped along the way. One night, after a particularly grueling round of coding, Malik and Dre leaned back in their chairs, taking a rare moment to decompress. Dre rubbed his temples, letting out a long sigh. "Man, I just got the 6th rejection email this month. These VCs keep telling us we're too niche, that we're not scalable enough." Malik drummed his fingers on the desk. "It's frustrating, but we're on to something. I know it. We just need the right person to believe in us." Dre nodded slowly, a small grin forming. "Just watch, we're gonna look back on these days and laugh." They clinked their disposable coffee cups together as if to toast future triumphs. The next morning, they were back to hustling, contacting every venture capitalist, angel investor, and philanthropic organization that might have even a slight interest in their project. They practiced their pitch over and over, refining the details. And when they weren't pitching, they were iterating on the platform, coding new features, and analyzing competitor data. Then one day, fate seemed to smile upon them. A well-known venture capitalist, Mrs. Grace Afolabi, requested a meeting. She was renowned for her ability to spot talent in unexpected places. Nervous energy coursed through Malik as he straightened his tie before entering the plush conference room in the upscale part of the city. Mrs. Afolabi, poised and impeccably dressed, listened intently as Malik and Dre walked her through their vision. They explained how their platform would allow a single parent in Lagos to invest microsums in global markets, or a college student in Nairobi to grow savings passively. The potential social impact was enormous. When they finished, Mrs. Afolabi closed her folder and smiled. "I like it," she said simply. "Your passion, your plan, I see a future here. I'm willing to invest $250,000 as seed funding." Malik nearly dropped his pen. Dre coughed in surprise, trying to mask the tears that threatened to spill from sheer relief. They had finally found someone who saw what they saw. While $250,000 wasn't a massive sum by Silicon Valley standards, it was everything they needed to get the ball rolling. Within weeks, they set up a modest but proper office, hired a small team of developers, and began accelerating their progress. Official documents were signed, PR announcements were made. Articles about their micro-investing startup began popping up on niche tech blogs, praising them for their vision and potential. Malik could sense the shift in the air. This was the beginning of something big. Other investors took notice. Soon, the small team was fielding calls from multiple venture funds. They secured more rounds of funding as they hit key milestones, launching a beta version of the app, partnering with local banks in several African countries, and demonstrating actual impact on the ground. By the end of the second year, the startup had grown from just Malik and Dre to a staff of 20 passionate individuals. For Malik, success was sweet, but it didn't dull his memory of those lonely nights after Tasha left. If anything, it fueled his drive to build an empire quietly, away from the prying eyes of social media or superficial praise. He turned down multiple interview requests, preferring to let the product and the numbers speak for themselves. The company's user base soared. Tens of thousands of people were now using the platform for micro-investing, each transaction a small but meaningful step toward financial empowerment. "It's happening," Dre said one night as they surveyed the bustling office. "This is really happening." Malik nodded, a slight smile tugging at his lips. "Yeah, man. We're building something that matters." They celebrated their third year in operation by attending a major fintech conference in Nairobi. Malik took the stage in a crisp, tailored suit, a stark contrast to the worn-out jeans he used to wear during the early grind. He presented their growth metrics, their impact stories, and their plans for international expansion. Applause thundered through the auditorium. Journalists scrambled to interview him afterward, intrigued by the confident yet humble CEO whose innovations were rapidly changing the micro-investing landscape. When the headline broke, "From struggle to silicon, Malik aids startup revolutionizes micro-investing in Africa," Malik couldn't help but reflect on how far he'd come. He remembered sitting on that balcony months ago, staring at the city lights while Tasha scoffed at his modest offering. He remembered skipping meals to afford a gift that, in the end, he was mocked for. Now, holding a copy of the article in his hands, he felt validated. Not because the world recognized him, but because he had stayed true to himself. Still, he made no triumphant posts online, no showy displays of wealth. Quiet pride and focused ambition remained his guiding forces. After the conference, he headed back to the office and resumed work. There was still so much to do, so many lives to impact. He chose to keep building in silence, confident that true success spoke louder than any social media brag could. Far away from the fluorescent hum of Malik's expanding tech empire, Tasha's glittering lifestyle was beginning to lose its luster. While her Instagram feed still showcased snapshots of parties, designer clothes, and penthouse views, the reality behind the scenes was far from picture-perfect. Ricardo, the suave nightclub owner, had initially dazzled her with his fast cars, thick wads of cash, and the thrill of an exclusive nightlife. He introduced her to celebrities and socialites, people who dripped with wealth and flaunted it without shame. At first, Tasha reveled in the champagne toasts and VIP rooms. She loved the attention, both from Ricardo and from her growing online following. But as the months passed, she realized that Ricardo's empire was built on shaky foundations. Revenues from his clubs fluctuated wildly, and when business was down, his temper was up. He had a habit of drinking too much, erupting into arguments over trivial matters. He accused Tasha of not pulling her weight on social media promotions for his venues. Sometimes, the fights ended with slurred insults flung across penthouse walls. Other times, he simply vanished for days, leaving Tasha in a silent, echoing space strewn with expensive things she couldn't quite call her own. One evening, Tasha discovered a questionable receipt for a hotel suite she had never heard Ricardo mention. It was expensive, lavish, even, and dated from a night he claimed to be working late. Confronting him led to an explosive argument that ended with Ricardo storming out, slamming the door behind him. Tasha was left trembling in designer heels, realizing she might be losing her grip on the fairy tale life she had so proudly showcased online. The next day, seeking comfort, she dialed the number of a close friend. "Keisha, I don't know what to do," Tasha cried into the phone. "He barely comes home, and when he does, he's always yelling about something." Keisha sighed on the other end. "Girl, are you safe? Maybe you should come crash with me for a bit." "No," Tasha replied hastily. "I'm sure it'll blow over. Ricardo just has a lot on his plate. I can handle it." But she wasn't sure she really believed her own words. The cracks in her dream life kept spreading. Soon, those cracks reached her bank account. Unpaid bills began piling up on the kitchen counter. Her Instagram engagement dropped as she struggled to put on a happy facade when her personal life was crumbling. One fateful night, Ricardo left for the club and never returned. Tasha waited up, watching the hours tick by, each passing moment intensifying her worry and anger. By morning, she discovered a note, if it could even be called that, scribbled on a napkin: "Need space. Don't try to find me." She searched the penthouse, only to find half the closet empty. Credit card statements showed suspicious charges in another state. It didn't take long for her to realize that Ricardo had vanished, possibly chasing another opportunity or another woman. In the weeks that followed, Tasha was left alone with looming debt, a few remnants of luxury items, and the crushing reality that she had no stable source of income. The champagne brunches she had flaunted were now a distant memory. She tried to revitalize her influencer persona, posting old photos, trying to feign continuity, but her followers seemed to sense the shift. Engagement plummeted. Sponsored deal offers dried up. Desperate for an income stream, she applied for social media management roles, but her resume was thin beyond her personal posts. She reached out to old friends for job references, but many had moved on or were unwilling to help. Some politely brushed her off. Others openly reminded her of how she had ghosted them once she started dating Ricardo. Exhaustion and anxiety took their toll. Tasha sat in her once gorgeous penthouse, now noticeably stripped of its grandeur, scrolling through job listings. Administrative assistant, receptionist, data entry. Nothing glamorous, but she couldn't afford to be picky anymore. Then, a glimmer of hope, a friend texted her a link to a job opening. Big tech company, new HQ downtown. The message read, "Salary is decent. They're hiring a front desk receptionist. Go for it." Tasha bit her lip, eyes flicking to the few unopened bills on the coffee table. She needed this. She rummaged through her closet for something professional, eventually settling on a black blazer, the only decent business attire she had left that still fit. She practiced her interview answers in the mirror, determined to present herself as poised and competent. On the day of her interview, Tasha stepped into a sleek glass tower that exuded success. Polished floors, modern art installations, and well-dressed professionals gliding through the lobby, everything signaled an environment of ambition and accomplishment. Her stomach churned with nerves, not just because she badly needed the job, but because she felt like an imposter in a world she once believed she belonged to. Clutching her resume, she approached the reception desk. A friendly woman there instructed her to head up to the 32nd floor for her interview. Tasha entered the elevator, her palms moist with anxiety. As the doors were about to close, a tall, sharply dressed man stepped in. She glanced at him, intending only to offer a polite smile. But her heart nearly stopped. The man was Malik, his posture regal, his suit impeccably tailored. A CEO badge, clipped to his jacket pocket, caught the overhead light. The name on it was unmistakable. Time seemed to freeze. She remembered the last time they stood together in an elevator, years ago, back when they were still in love, or so she had thought. Back before she belittled his Aldo purchase, before she left him for Ricardo's flashy lifestyle. She stared at him, wide-eyed, as a tumult of emotions filled her chest. What was he doing here? Could he possibly own this company? The idea seemed absurd, and yet the badge was clear. Malik Ade. He turned, met her gaze, and for a moment the world went silent. She felt her cheeks grow hot, her heart hammering in her chest. Tasha opened her mouth to speak, but words failed her. Malik simply gave a faint nod, his expression inscrutable. He pressed a button for his floor, then settled into a calm stance, facing forward. The elevator ascended in tense silence. At the 32nd floor, the doors slid open with a soft chime. He stepped out first, and Tasha followed, her mind reeling. In the hallway, a staff member gestured for her to enter a conference room. She walked in, her legs suddenly feeling like lead. When she glanced up at the polished wooden table, she saw Malik standing at the head, a folder under his arm. Her resume. "Ms. Thompson," he greeted her with professional detachment, "it's good to see you. You're here for the receptionist position, right?" She managed a feeble nod, her throat too tight to form a coherent sentence. His steady gaze gave nothing away, neither anger nor bitterness. If anything, there was a trace of distant kindness, as though he recognized her struggles but refused to let his personal history derail the interview. Tasha's knees threatened to give out. She gripped the chair for support. In that moment, she understood how drastically the tables had turned. The party she once glorified, the life of luxury she flaunted, had ended. And now, she stood at the mercy of the man she had cast aside, only to realize he had become everything she thought he could never be. 2 days after the initial shock of seeing Malik in the conference room, Tasha sat at her kitchen table, if one could call a small glass slab balanced on 2 metal stands a kitchen table, staring at the simple email on her phone. Subject: Job offer, receptionist position. Dear Tasha Thompson, thank you for interviewing with us. We're pleased to extend you an offer for the front desk receptionist role. She read it 3 times, her emotions a jumbled mix of relief, gratitude, and crushing embarrassment. The pay was decent, certainly enough to cover her immediate bills and keep her afloat until she could figure out her next steps. But it also meant she would be working for Malik, the very man she had humiliated years before. A memory flashed through her mind, the day she laughed at the Aldo handbag. She pictured his face, how crestfallen he looked despite putting on a brave front. Would he exact revenge by making her job miserable? Or had he simply moved on? On her first day, she arrived at the gleaming high-rise building 15 minutes early. The HR coordinator guided her to her station, a sleek reception desk adorned with a single orchid. She was given a quick rundown of her duties, answering calls, greeting visitors, scheduling appointments. Straightforward enough. Malik was nowhere to be seen for most of the morning. Tasha tried to focus on the flurry of tasks at hand. Yet each time the elevator dinged or footsteps approached, her stomach lurched, half expecting him to appear. Her anxiety peaked just before noon when the elevator slid open to reveal a group of executives, Malik among them. She tried to compose herself, plastering on a professional smile. She noted how he carried himself with an air of quiet confidence. No arrogance, no showing off. He spoke to his colleagues with warmth, nodding as they discussed some upcoming product launch. Finally, he turned his attention to her. "Tasha," he said, pausing in front of the desk. "How's your first day going?" Good. Thank you," she managed, her voice wavering slightly. He offered a small smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "If you need anything, feel free to contact my assistant, Lola. She'll help you get settled." With that, he continued down the corridor, leaving her standing there, heart pounding. Throughout the day, Tasha worked diligently, trying to prove she was more than just a woman from Malik's past. She answered calls promptly, directed clients with politeness, and maintained a friendly demeanor toward the staff. But inside, she was wrestling with conflicting emotions, shame for how she had treated Malik, fear of how he might retaliate, or worse, pity her, and a lingering sense of heartbreak at seeing him so happy and successful without her. During her lunch break, Tasha wandered outside to a small courtyard filled with potted plants and benches. She sat down to eat a hastily packed sandwich, only to realize she wasn't alone. A graceful woman with a radiant smile approached, extending her hand. "Hi, you're Tasha, right? I'm Ayana. I handle some of our international partnerships here. Malik mentioned you'd be joining us at the front desk." Tasha tried to hide her surprise. "Oh, nice to meet you," she said, shaking Ayana's hand. "I'm just getting settled in." Ayana sat beside her. "I remember my first week. I felt so overwhelmed. But the team here is really supportive. If you ever want to grab coffee or need advice, I'm around." Before Tasha could respond, she noticed the glimmer of a stunning engagement ring on Ayana's finger. Her breath caught in her throat. "That's a beautiful ring," she managed, her eyes lingering on the diamond. Ayana smiled warmly. "Thank you. Malik proposed a few months ago. We haven't set a date yet, things have been so busy. But soon, hopefully." For a heartbeat, Tasha felt a crushing weight on her chest. She forced a polite smile. "Congratulations. That's wonderful news." It was one thing to see Malik as her boss, successful and composed. It was another thing entirely to confront the fact that he was engaged to someone so poised and gracious. Tasha remembered her own past fantasies of marrying Malik back when they shared cheap dinners and big dreams. Now, he was on the brink of a future she once thought was hers to share. Later that afternoon, she found herself in the break room, staring aimlessly at the coffee machine. A swirl of self-pity and regret threatened to drag her down. She recalled how dismissively she used to talk about Malik's ambitions, calling him a project, belittling his dreams of starting a company. And now, not only did he succeed without her, but he also seemed genuinely happy with someone else. Swallowing her pride, she pushed through the rest of the day. Task after task, phone call after phone call. She spoke politely, smiled at passers-by, and avoided sneaking peeks at Malik whenever he walked by. By 5 o'clock, she was mentally drained. Just as she was about to gather her things, she heard a gentle voice. "Hey, you did great today." She spun around to see Malik standing a few feet away, his hands in his pockets. "Thanks," she said softly. "I appreciate the chance." He nodded, then hesitated. "Look, Tasha, the past is the past. We both made choices. This is a professional environment, and I want you to feel comfortable working here." She opened her mouth, uncertain of what to say. 100 apologies danced on her tongue, but none seemed sufficient. In the end, she settled for a quiet nod. "Understood, Malik. And, thank you." He gave a courteous dip of his head. "Have a good evening." As he walked away, Tasha felt a swirl of emotions. Gratitude for the job, regret for her past decisions, and an odd pang of envy seeing him so self-assured. Despite the turmoil in her heart, she recognized that this was her new reality. She was no longer the woman on a pedestal, demanding luxury. She was an employee, trying to rebuild her life under the watchful eye of a man she once scorned. That night, at home, Tasha sank onto her sofa with a heavy sigh. She was determined to make the best of this opportunity, even if it meant swallowing her pride daily. She grabbed her laptop and browsed motivational videos, hoping to rekindle a sense of purpose beyond the shame she felt. A phrase from one video stuck with her: "Mistakes can be the foundation of a stronger future, if you let them be." She closed her laptop, echoing the words in her mind. Perhaps this job would be more than just a paycheck. Perhaps it was her chance to learn humility, resilience, and genuine self-improvement. But that learning process would involve confronting everything she had run from, starting with the man she once dismissed and the company he now led with quiet authority. Over the following weeks, Tasha settled into her role with surprising ease. She arrived early, stayed late, and learned the names of key clients and staff. Her phone manner improved, and she even began refining scheduling processes so that the front desk became more efficient. While some employees whispered about her background, words like ex-fiancé and awkward reunion occasionally floated by. Most treated her with professional courtesy. Malik stayed busy overseeing product expansions and closing partnership deals. He and Tasha interacted only when necessary. Every now and then he offered polite encouragement. "Good job on coordinating that delivery," but their exchanges remained clipped and formal. Tasha found herself grateful for his respectful distance. It gave her space to do her job without the weight of their shared history looming too heavily. One afternoon, while Tasha was sorting mail, Ayana approached the reception desk. "Hey, can I talk to you for a minute?" she asked softly, a kind look in her eyes. Tasha set down the envelopes. "Of course." Ayana led her to a small lounge area near the lobby. The walls were decorated with abstract art, and large windows offered a panoramic view of the city. Ayana gestured for Tasha to sit. Once they were settled, Ayana took a breath. "I know we haven't had a real chance to chat, but I wanted you to know something." She touched the engagement ring on her finger. "Malik told me you used to be part of his life. He didn't share many details, but he said your story inspired him." Tasha's eyes flickered with a mix of confusion and heartbreak. "Inspired him?" Ayana nodded. "He said that when you two parted ways, it pushed him to work harder and believe in himself more. He credited some of his perseverance to what he learned from that experience." Tasha swallowed, feeling her throat tighten. She had assumed Malik would only harbor resentment. Instead, he had somehow transformed their painful history into a driving force. Ayana reached out and gently squeezed Tasha's hand. "I'm not telling you this to make you feel awkward. I just wanted to say that he respects you. He genuinely believes you played a role in shaping who he is today. And, for whatever it's worth, I respect you too." Emotion welled in Tasha's chest. She managed a shaky smile. "Thank you. That means a lot." That evening, as Tasha locked up the reception area, she thought back to Ayana's words. She tried to reconcile her memories of Malik, struggling to make ends meet, offering her the Aldo bag, with the confident leader he'd become. And she also recalled her own journey, chasing Ricardo's flash, ending up with nothing. It struck her how life could twist and turn, making villains out of saints and teachers out of old regrets. The weeks flew by, and Tasha gradually found her footing. The paychecks rolled in, enough for her to move out of the half-furnished penthouse and into a cozy studio apartment closer to work. She started taking online courses in business administration, hoping to upgrade her skills. A quiet determination sparked in her. She wanted to be more than just a receptionist. She wanted to build something of her own, even if it was smaller than Malik's empire. One day, as she was finalizing a courier shipment, Malik approached the front desk, followed by Ayana and a board member. "Tasha, could you schedule a meeting next Thursday with our Kenyan partners?" 2 o'clock, Malik said, handing her a small folder of documents. "Sure." She flipped open her scheduling tool, penciling it in. Ayana offered Tasha a friendly nod, and the group headed down the corridor. Just as they turned the corner, Tasha overheard the board member praising Malik's leadership and remarking on how well the new expansions were going. She felt an odd surge of pride for him. Despite everything, she couldn't deny his talent or determination. That afternoon, the office buzzed with anticipation for a major press event. Journalists, photographers, and potential investors filled the lobby. Malik was set to give a short talk about the company's newest initiative. Tasha watched from the sidelines as he took the podium in the spacious conference hall, cameras flashing. His speech was concise and impactful, focusing on the company's mission to provide accessible micro-investing tools to underserved populations. He highlighted success stories, single mothers saving for their children's education, young entrepreneurs funding startup ideas with small investments. When the applause finally echoed through the hall, Tasha felt goosebumps ripple across her arms. Just then, Ayana joined Malik on stage, introduced as his fiancé and head of their international partnerships. She spoke briefly about upcoming global expansions, her tone confident and collaborative. Together, they exuded a sense of unity, the kind of power couple that made headlines. Tasha couldn't help but reflect on what might have been if she had believed in Malik's dream from the start. But as soon as the pang of regret surfaced, she pushed it aside. Lingering on the past wouldn't solve anything now. When the event ended, Tasha found herself in the corridor near the conference hall, tidying up brochures. A voice behind her said, "Tasha?" She turned to see Malik, looking tired but satisfied. "That was a great speech," she offered, handing him a small stack of leftover pamphlets. "That was a great speech," she offered, handing him a small stack of leftover pamphlets. He accepted them. "Thank you." A pause, then, "You handled the front desk well today. There were a lot of important guests." She mustered a genuine smile. "Thanks. I'm glad I could help." They stood in silence for a moment, neither entirely sure what to say next. The air between them felt lighter than before, devoid of the tension and bitterness that once defined their relationship's end. Finally, Malik spoke again. "People change, Tasha. We all make mistakes. But sometimes those mistakes push us to grow. Oh, I hope you're finding your footing here." She nodded, tears threatening to prick her eyes, though she blinked them back. "I am," she replied. "I appreciate the chance to prove myself." With a small smile, Malik made his way down the hall to rejoin Ayana. Tasha observed them together, a twinge of envy mixing with a sense of respect. Ayana's hand rested comfortably on his arm, their connection unmistakable. Tasha understood then that whatever dream she once had with Malik was firmly in the past. A few days later, as the office was winding down for the evening, Tasha was in the break room making a cup of tea. Ayana wandered in, balancing a few folders. "Mind if I join you?" she asked. "Not at all," Tasha replied. They chatted briefly about work matters before Ayana fell quiet. Then she said, almost shyly, "You know, Malik always speaks about how important every step of his journey was. Even the painful ones." Tasha stared at the steam rising from her cup. "I'm sure he does." Ayana offered a gentle smile. "He told me you once said you had gold in your hands and dropped it for glitter. And that it changed the way he looked at perseverance and love. In some ways he's grateful." Tasha's throat tightened, recalling a private moment when she admitted her regret to herself. "I'm glad he found someone who truly supports him." Ayana took a sip of her own tea. "Thank you, Tasha. And I'm rooting for you too. If there's anything I can do to help, please let me know." Touched by the sincerity, Tasha nodded. She realized she was no longer the woman who cared only about designer labels and high society parties. Her experiences had humbled her, teaching her the value of genuine relationships and hard work. That night, she left the building feeling strangely hopeful. While she'd lost Malik's love, she had gained a chance at rebuilding her life. As she stepped onto the bustling sidewalk, she recalled a line she once read: "Be careful how you treat people when they have nothing. Because when they become everything, you may be left with nothing." Yet, she understood now that even after losing so much, a new beginning was possible. And for Tasha, that realization was more precious than any designer bag could ever be. Viral closing narration: be careful how you treat people when they have nothing. Because when they become everything, you may be left with nothing. Yet sometimes, from those ashes, you can still learn to rebuild a better life. The end. If you enjoyed this story, we invite you to give it a like and subscribe to our channel. Your support motivates us to keep bringing heartwarming stories almost every day. We are very grateful for your support. See you soon.